Welcome back to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that honestly feels like it belongs in a massive Hollywood epic, but it's actually a profound, documented historical reality. We're breaking down the rise and spectacular fall of the world's richest kingdom, Saba, or the People of Sheba. Just imagine a civilization so incredibly powerful, so invincible that it literally vanished under the sands and water in a single night. And the craziest part? It wasn't taken down by a massive invading army or some catastrophic earthquake. It was a divine command carried out by one of the humblest creatures on Earth. So let's explore exactly how an absolute earthly paradise turned into a barren wasteland. Let's trace this timeline together. We'll start with their heaven on earth, move into the era of Queen Bilqis, look at the rise of arrogance, the breaking dam, and finally wrap up with a final lesson.
Chapter 1: Heaven on Earth, the Peak of Prosperity.
To really get why their fall was so devastating, we have to understand just how high they climbed. Down in the southern part of Arabia, in what's modern-day Yemen, there was this ancient utopia. Hunger was literally just a word to them. The sources tell us Saba was hands down the most prosperous nation on Earth at the time. The air was perfect, the rains fell with absolute clockwork precision, the cities were spotless and perfectly safe, and their gardens? They were so insanely lush that it said a traveler could just walk through with a basket on their head and it would fill itself with fruit without them even lifting a finger. No one ever went hungry. Wealth was everywhere. Gold? They treated it like common dirt. It was, in every sense of the word, heaven on earth.
Now, the secret behind all this lush greenery was the Marib Dam. And listen, this wasn't just some basic wall holding back a stream. It was an absolute architectural marvel of the ancient world. The sheer scale of their engineering was mind-blowing. This dam was the literal beating heart of their survival. It caught the seasonal rains and expertly, flawlessly distributed the water to these massive, sprawling gardens on both its right and left sides. It was the perfect engine driving this perfect economy.
But here's the thing that really anchored their early society. It's beautifully captured in this Quranic verse. Eat from the provision of your Lord and be grateful. You see, their unmatched wealth, their safety, that genius dam, none of it was viewed as just lucky geography or their own sheer brilliance. It was universally understood as a direct result of Allah's system of mercy. They were blessed with a beautiful city and a forgiving Lord because their whole society was built on a foundation of gratitude. Moving into Chapter 2, the era of Queen Bilqis, where power meets prophecy. This whole story actually hits its peak under one of history's most famous and wisest rulers, Queen Bilqis. You probably know her as the Queen of Sheba. Her empire was absolutely vast, and her fame echoed all across the ancient world. It eventually reached Prophet Sulaiman, peace be upon him. When he sent her a letter inviting her to submit to the divine, Bilqis, being this brilliant tactician, she tried diplomacy first. She sent him these staggering earthly gifts: gold, silver, priceless jewels. But Prophet Sulaiman completely rejected them. He made it clear that what Allah had given him was infinitely superior to any earthly wealth. So, intrigued, she traveled to meet him. And when she gets there, she's led into this magnificent palace. She sees what she thinks is a pool of water on the floor, so she lifts her dress to step in. But it wasn't water. It was a flawless illusion made of solid, polished glass, overflowing water. And in that one singular moment, the illusion of her own worldly supremacy completely shattered. Standing right there in that glass palace, she suddenly realized that true power belongs solely to the Creator. Her massive earthly kingdom, it was nothing in comparison. So she said, "My Lord, I was wrong, I submit." It is just this stunning moment of humility from a ruler who literally had everything. Because she had the wisdom to recognize divine authority over her gold and silver, her entire nation followed her lead, and Saba entered into a beautiful golden spiritual era. Chapter 3, the rise of arrogance and the shift in generations. But you know how history goes. Time has a way of eroding memory. As the decades rolled on, the era of Queen Bilqis faded. The spiritual foundation of the empire began to crack, and that deep-seated gratitude slowly rotted into this dangerous, blinding hubris. Look at this psychological shift. The grateful generation believed their wealth was a pure mercy from Allah. The new generation? They thought it was all because of their own brilliant intellect. They started saying, "We built these gardens, we constructed this dam." They stopped listening to prophetic guidance and actually started mocking it. They lost all fear of divine accountability, totally intoxicated by their own power, genuinely believing their empire was invincible. They completely forgot the Creator and just fell in love with the creation. Allah sent prophets to warn them, pleading with them, saying if you leave gratitude, this blessing will become a heavy burden. It's a mercy, not your own intellect. But look at the sheer audacity of their response. They literally laughed in the prophets' faces. They said, "You're trying to scare us? Look at our Marib Dam. It's strong like a mountain. We are untouchable." They basically challenged God, boldly declaring that their technology and their wealth were enough to stop any punishment.
This brings us to Chapter 4, the Breaking Dam, the Night of Wrath.
And this is the climax. This is the moment where the illusion of man-made power violently shatters against the reality of divine command. I just want you to let this incredible fact sink in for a second. One tiny rat. An entire empire that mocked the prophets of God, an empire that put all its trust in a mountain-like dam of flawless engineering, an empire that thought its wealth made it immortal, was brought to its knees. Not by a conquering army, not by a meteor, but by a rat. Acting on divine command, these little creatures quietly began to gnaw away at the impenetrable foundations of the Great Marib Dam.
The whole catastrophe unfolded with this terrifying precision. While the rats quietly burrowed into the dam's foundation, the people just ignored the subtle signs. They were totally blind with arrogance. Then came the night. The city was asleep, dead silent, totally wrapped in its delusion of safety. First, there was a cracking sound, then another, and suddenly the massive, unbreakable dam shattered completely. No warning whatsoever. The very water that was the absolute source of their life, their greatest blessing, transformed in an instant into a roaring, inescapable wrath. A torrential flood violently swept through the valley, consuming homes, gardens, markets, and the people themselves. Their screams were entirely drowned out by the crushing weight of the water.
The historical and spiritual verdict of this night is finalized in this solemn Quranic verse. But they turned away, so we sent upon them the flood of the dam. That water? It showed absolutely no mercy to the kings, the wealthy, or the arrogant. It swept away generations of entitling in one single terrifying night. An entire civilization that honestly thought it could outsmart a divine was simply washed out of existence.
The contrast here is just an absolute tragedy. Look at this. Before the flood, you had ripe gardens, limitless wealth, absolute safety. After the flood, dust. The lush trees were replaced with bitter, thorny bushes. Those magnificent homes were wiped clean off the map. It became a barren wasteland. An earthly paradise was reduced to absolute ruin, all simply because they abandoned gratitude.
Which leads us to Chapter 5, the final lesson, for then and now. Now, we aren't exploring this history just to tell some ancient ghost story. The psychology of People Saba is incredibly relevant to us today. There are real, universal truths here. First of all, wealth didn't destroy People Saba. Their money wasn't the crime. Their arrogance was. Second, a blessing without gratitude rapidly becomes a curse. I mean, the water that fed them was the exact same water that drowned them. Third, no earthly power, no massive wall, no advanced technology can ever stop a divine command. And finally, and I think this is perhaps the most important takeaway for us today, if a blessing distances you from the Creator, it isn't a blessing at all. It's a dangerous illusion.
So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Dalet ya gurur. Wealth or arrogance? When we look at the collapse of empires, both ancient and modern, what's the true catalyst of destruction? Is it just the accumulation of wealth, or is it the blind arrogance that follows it? Think about our modern societies right now. Are we building our own Marib dams of technology and wealth, thinking we are totally untouchable? Take a moment to reflect on that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel as we continue to unpack the profound spiritual history of our world. See you in the next one.